I don't even know when it started. The slow fading, the silence that filled the spaces where laughter used to live. Maybe it was after our second kid was born, maybe after her mother got sick, or maybe, if I'm being honest, it was long before that. And I just didn't want to admit it. We've been married for 21 years, together for 23. The last time she touched me, really touched me, not a shoulder pat or a polite hug, was maybe a year ago. Sex? Once, maybe twice a year, both times mechanical, like paying tax. I used to think it was my fault. That maybe I wasn't attractive anymore, or that I didn't try hard enough. I did try. Flowers, date nights, therapy suggestions, taking more responsibility at home, giving her space. I tried so hard that eventually I stopped recognizing myself, and she didn't seem to notice. She wasn't cruel. That's the worst part. She wasn't abusive, she wasn't hateful, she just wasn't there. Everything between us became transactional. Did you pay the bill? Who's picking up Emma? We need milk. We're not partnered. We're not even friends. We're roommates raising kids together. I didn't cheat. Not physically, anyway. But about 6 months ago, I started talking more often with a colleague, someone I've known for years. Let's call her C. She's married too. We work in overlapping fields, so coffee meets and casual catch-ups were normal. But one afternoon, she told me something simple that hit me harder than it should have. She said, "You look tired." Like, not just work tired, soul tired. I don't know why, but I almost cried out. No one had looked at me like that in years. Like I was a person, not just a function. We didn't flirt at first. We talked about kids, jobs, frustration, burnout. The more we talked, the more I realized how empty my own house felt. And then, one evening, after a work event, we sat in her car for almost an hour. No touching, no kissing. Just silence and honesty. I told her, I don't think my wife loves me. She said, I don't think my husband ever did. And that was it. Something shifted. I went home that night, looked at my wife asleep on the couch, and realized that for years I'd been waiting for something that wasn't coming. And now, I can't unsee it. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan, counting every rotation like it could erase the thoughts running through my head. There's a strange calm that comes after you admit something to yourself, even if it's devastating. The truth doesn't always explode. Sometimes it just settles quietly, like dust after a storm. The next morning, I made coffee for both of us, the way I always do. She walked in, hair tied up, scrolling through her phone. "Morning," I said. "Morning," she replied. That was it. No smile. No warmth. Just two people who happened to share the same kitchen. It hit me that I was mourning someone who was still alive, mourning a marriage that still technically existed, mourning a love that had vanished years ago. During work, I couldn't focus. Every email felt like noise, every meeting like a distraction from the storm inside my head. Around noon, C texted me, "Are you okay?" I stared at the message for 5 minutes before replying, "Not really." We met for lunch, though I barely ate. She didn't either. We just talked mostly about guilt. She told me she'd been in therapy since her separation, trying to unlearn the need to fix people. I told her I was stuck between two versions of myself, one who stayed for the kids, for the money, for the guilt, and one who left and maybe destroyed everything. She said something that I've been replaying ever since. Sometimes staying hurts more than leaving ever could. That night, my wife and I had dinner with our kid. We laughed about something our son said, a rare moment of normalcy. For a second, I almost convinced myself things could be okay. Then she asked, "Did you pick up the dry cleaning?" That was it. Back to logistics. Later, I watched her reading in bed. The same soft lamp, the same silence. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but nothing came out. I realized that the hardest part of falling out of love isn't the absence of love itself. It's pretending you still have it. A few days later, I told her I wanted to talk. She looked nervous, like she already knew something was wrong. We sat in the living room, the same couch we'd bought when the kids were toddlers, now sun-faded and stained with old coffee spills. "I think we need to talk about us," I said. She crossed her arms. "What about us?" I hesitated. "I don't think I'm happy. I don't think either of us is." She didn't say anything at first. Then she sighed. "Is this about someone else?" That question hit me like a punch. I said no. Technically true, but emotionally a lie. She stared at me for a long time, then said, "We can fix this. We've been through worse." And that's when I realized she didn't even ask why I wasn't happy. She just wanted to patch the surface, keep the house standing, even if the foundation was rotting. After she went to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen. The silence felt heavy. I looked at the family photos on the wall, birthdays, vacations, smiling faces frozen in time, and I didn't recognize myself in any of them. I messaged C. I told her we're not happy. How did she take it? She wants to fix it. Do you? I stared at that question for a long time. Then I typed, "I don't know," but I did know. The days after that conversation were strange, not explosive, not dramatic, just strange. My wife acted as if nothing had happened. We still had dinner together, still discussed bills, groceries, school stuff. She even made a few jokes, forced ones, but still. It almost felt like she thought that if she ignored the crack long enough, the wall would repair itself. But I couldn't go back. Something in me had shifted permanently. At work, I was quiet. I avoided C for a while. I told myself I needed space to think clearly, to separate what was real from what was fantasy. The problem was, the fantasy felt more real real than my life. Every time I walked through my front door, it felt like stepping into a museum of my own choices. The furniture, the framed photos, the sound of the washing machine. Everything screamed stability, but underneath it all was rot. I started taking long drives after work. I'd park near the coast and just sit in my car watching people walk dogs, laughing, holding hands. I wondered if I'd ever feel that again. Not excitement, not passion, just closeness. Sometimes I'd imagine what it would be like to live alone. To wake up in silence that belonged only to me. No resentment, no pretending. Just quiet dot, and then I'd think of my kid, and the guilt would crush me all over again. A few weeks later, my daughter asked if I could help her with a school project, a poster about family. She wanted to use photos. As we scrolled through old albums together, she said, "Dad, why do you and Mom never take pictures anymore?" I froze. I didn't know how to answer. I said something like, "We've just been busy." But her eyes said she didn't buy it. Kids know. They always know. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat in the dark living room again. I thought about my daughter's question, and I realized something terrifying. I didn't remember the last time my wife and I had genuinely laughed together. Not just smiled politely. Laugh. The kind that makes your stomach hurt, Dot. When did we stop laughing? When did we stop trying? I saw C again, unexpectedly, at a work conference. It wasn't planned. We ran into each other at the coffee bar. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," I replied. We talked like normal colleagues for a while. Work stuff, schedules, deadlines, but it was all surface level. Then, as I was leaving, she said, "You look better." I smiled. "I'm not, but thanks." She touched my arm, not flirtatiously, just humanly, and said, "You deserve to be happy. You know that, right?" And that single, simple sentence hit me harder than I expected, because I realized I hadn't heard anything like it from my wife in years. Back home, I found myself watching my wife differently. Not with anger, but with a strange detachment, like watching a stranger through a window. She laughed at a video on her phone, scrolled, frowned, went to bed. We barely talked, Dot. It wasn't hatred. It was emptiness, Dot, and sometimes emptiness is worse, because there's nothing to fight for. I started going to therapy, not because I thought it would save the marriage, but because I wanted to figure out who I was outside of it. The therapist asked, "When did you stop feeling connected?" I said, "I don't think I ever really was." That sentence scared me and freed me at the same time. Dot. One night, I came home late from work. Everyone was asleep. The house was dark except for the kitchen light. On the table was a note from my wife. "Dinner's in the fridge. Don't forget to take out the trash. No, love you." No warmth, just another routine instruction. I looked at that note for a long time before crumpling it up and throwing it away. And I realized something I'd been avoiding for years. This isn't love. This is management, and I don't want to manage anymore. It happened on a Sunday morning. Nothing special. Coffee, pancakes, my son arguing with his sister over syrup. The same routine that used to make me feel safe. Except this time, I felt like a guest in my own house. Dot, my wife, was humming while doing dishes. I watched her for a moment, thinking how familiar every movement was, and how little it moved me. And then she looked at me and asked, "Why do you look so far away lately?" The question hit me like a slap, because she was right. I was far away. I hesitated. Then I said the quiet part out loud. "I don't think I can do this anymore." She froze, holding a wet plate midair. "Do what?" "This," I said. "Us." The silence that followed was unbearable. The sound of the faucet dripping, my heart pounding, the kids laughing in the next room. All of it too loud. Dot. She finally said, "You're serious." "I am." "Because of someone else?" "No," I said again. "Because of everything." Her face changed, not rage, not sadness, just pure disbelief. "You can't just throw 20 years away." I wanted to tell her that it already was gone, that we'd just been pretending not to notice. But I didn't. She walked out of the kitchen, shutting the door softly behind her. That soft, final click felt like the end of something huge and invisible. For the next few days, we coexisted like ghosts. No fighting, no talking, just avoidance. We told the kids we were taking some space. My daughter cried. My son shrugged, pretending not to care. But I saw the fear in both their eyes. I moved into the small guest room. Slept badly. At 3 a.m. one night, I heard her crying in the bathroom. I wanted to go in to comfort her, but I couldn't, because I wasn't crying for her. I was crying for the years I'd wasted. I saw C less often after that. Not because of guilt, but because the reality of my life felt too heavy to drag into hers. She messaged me once, "You don't owe me anything. Just be honest with yourself." And for the first time, I truly was. A few weeks later, my wife asked if we could talk. She looked exhausted, eyes red, voice shaking. "I don't know what happened," she said, "but I can't fix this alone." And that's when I realized she still didn't understand. This wasn't a crack. It was a collapse, and there was no fixing it. "I think we need to separate," I said quietly. She didn't yell, didn't beg. She just nodded like she'd known it deep down all along. Then she whispered, "You'll regret this." Maybe I will, I thought. But staying would have been a different kind of regret. The slow, silent kind that kills you one routine at a time. It's been almost a year since that Sunday. The house feels different now, quieter, emptier, but somehow lighter. My wife and I separated a few months after that talk. It wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no accusations, just a slow, painful acceptance that love can die even when no one meant to kill it. She kept the house. I moved into a small apartment closer to work. The kids stay with her most of the time, but come to me on weekends. The first weekend alone, I didn't know what to do with myself. I sat on the couch surrounded by unopened boxes and wondered if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. But then I realized something. I could breathe. For the first time in years, I could breathe without guilt, without tiptoeing around someone else's silence, without pretending she and I didn't end up together. We talked a few times after the separation, but she told me she needed space to heal, to be on her own for a while. And I respected that. It hurt, of course. But deep down, I knew that what connected us wasn't just attraction, it was loneliness. And sometimes two lonely people can't save each other. They just teach each other what being seen feels like. There are days I miss my old life, the comfort, the routine, the illusion of stability. But then I remember how numb I felt sitting across from someone who didn't want to know me anymore. Now remember how numb I felt sitting across from someone who didn't want to know me anymore. Now I make breakfast for one. I walk to work. I read again. I even started running badly, but it clears my head. The kids seem okay. My daughter told me once, "You seem happier, Dad." That meant more than anything. Sometimes people ask why I didn't fight harder. The truth is, I fought for years, quietly, desperately. But fighting alone isn't a partnership. I've learned that love isn't something you sustain by sheer force. It's something that breathes between two people. And when one person stops breathing it, the other eventually suffocates. I saw my ex-wife last week when I dropped the kids off. She looked calm, tired, but calm. We talked about bills and school like always, but this time there wasn't bitterness, just a strange kind of peace. Before I left, she said, "I hope you find what you're looking for." And for the first time, I think I actually am not in someone else. Not in a new love story, just in the quiet truth of my own life that endings aren't failures. They're just the moments we finally stop lying to ourselves.